Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. Numbers to get in. Dial up with us at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt, that's me, and Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And as always, email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com. The Magnificent Seven, right? 7 in-state kids, 7 in-state offers, a banner class potentially of 2023 players for Nebraska. We'll try and run down, and he's hard to catch, Benny Nagoy from Lincoln High, standout wide receiver and defensive back. He's doing some track right now because he's awesome at that. Benny's supposed to be with us towards the end of the show. Got to catch up with Mickey Joseph earlier as he popped by Lincoln High and got that Nebraska offer. Zane Flores off to Stillwater. The Gretna stud is going to go play quarterback in the Big 12. A couple of news and notes to get to with some of the in-state stops for Nebraska's coaching as it is spring evaluation period. So we'll get there. We'll dive into quarterback play for Nebraska. Some news and notes also around how much USFL did you catch on the weekend? And, of course, match play, the match. No PGA pros, but a lot of NFL dudes that can swing it better than me. Elijah, what do you know? What's going on?
Not too much. Looking forward to watching my Nuggets play. That's been what's on my docket pretty much all day today. Just looking forward to that because after that Game 1 performance, I need to watch the taste out of my mouth. So hopefully the Nuggets can mount a better performance tonight against the Warriors. I'm not confident, but I am hopeful.
You can always be hopeful. Coming up in about 15 minutes, more on the recruiting trail with Greg Smith from Hail Varsity. And an hour from now, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. So as we dive in, what does better quarterback play constitute? Well, options first. That's more like 1A. One is taking care of the football, right? I mean, it's been a storyline. It's been an issue. It's plagued Nebraska for a lot of years, right? You have to go back to really kind of the mid-'90s to when ball security was pretty prime, despite running an option offense where you're prone to turnovers because of the amount of ball handling required. As you fast forward, Nebraska has had issues. As great as he was, Team Magic had ball security issues, right? You fast forward to Adrian, and Adrian just, man, he got bit by the turnover bug, either trying to do too much or would get strip sacked or bad snap or whatever the case. There was a lot of forcing going on or a play made by the defense. And it's tough because I have a pretty strong belief that if you're going to run your quarterback as much as Nebraska does, they need to be in contact during practice. Well, that's asking for trouble, and most places in college football do not let the quarterback get hit or breathed on. I think Alabama's the exception, quite honestly. And even then, if you hit the quarterback too hard, whoever that future first-round guy is, you might get a scolding. But really, that's, to me, Nebraska, it's hard to be a quarterback that takes care of the football when you're asked to run a lot. If your only contact, the majority of your contact comes on football Saturdays. And listen, you carry it and handle it differently as a quarterback than you do a running back. Backs are used to taking a handoff and that 45-point pressure setup that's been preached at and told to you by your running backs coach since Pee Wee ball. It's just different. So taking care of the football to me is going to be the prime thing for Nebraska football in 2022. That's probably pretty obvious, but it needs to be seen and done for Nebraska to have a better 2022. You're not going to ask your quarterback, presumably this quarterback, in Casey Thompson, not that he can't, but you're going to run the football with your running backs behind the offensive line. You might sprinkle in a little Marcus Mariota for good measure, 4 to 8 carries, or maybe a scramble here and there because he's a fast dude. But for the most part, Elijah, it's going to come down to getting time in the pocket, not throwing interceptions, taking care of the football, not getting strip sacked. And if you are taking off, taking care of the football, and Nebraska has been burned by that the last decade when it comes to taking care of the football. Even as many comebacks as Tommy Armstrong led, he was not necessarily fumble prone, but he was interception prone. And to say he was a pick thrower isn't right either. I thought Tommy, for a dual threat quarterback, really threw the football well for Nebraska.
Yeah, but the story of Nebraska, as you said, pretty much over the past decade, at least the past 5 years, has been those things that win and lose you close games, I should say, when it comes to turnovers, special teams, penalties. Those are all the areas that Nebraska has struggled with, and especially so early in the year in the past 4 years since Scott Frost has taken over. A lot of times they'll get penalties cleaned up. Special teams will show a semblance of improvement throughout the season. Even turnovers have sometimes gotten better. I think they got better last year as the season went on. Nebraska got better at protecting the ball. But it's these little things that you wonder what's going on in practice, where you go, are you not focusing on lining up on the line of scrimmage? Are you not focusing on practicing different snap counts so you're not going to false start? Or are you not focusing on instructing the running backs to keep it high and tight? It's those fundamentals of football that have been taught since Pee Wee that Nebraska has struggled with over the past couple of years. That's what's been losing them a good number of close football games. And yeah, I'm with you. I'd like to see those things cleaned up, and I think Nebraska does have the potential here for those things to be cleaned up. It's just a question of, can they actually do it come fall camp? Can they focus on those things and improve?
Well, and you've heard former coaches that used to be here preach it, specifically at the quarterback spot. How many years in spring and fall did Mario get in front of a microphone when it was his turn to talk and say, take care of the freaking ball? Well, Nebraska didn't get much better in big games. They're all big, right? Especially when you go 3-9 at taking care of the football. And it also comes down to kind of balancing out your offense, don't you think? If it was going to get done, it was Adrian that got it done. Right or wrong, he was out there trying to make a play. Or you're out there with McCaffrey, and he had a tough day against Minnesota. He had a tough game against Illinois. Not to completely rehash, but you look at those losses that you're still like pissed about as a Nebraska fan. You're like, turnovers. How many points off turnovers? How many killer starting field position, prime real estate setups to the opponent's offense get because of turnovers? A lot of them. Either you get stripped or you throw an interception. And it comes down to the overtime session against Michigan State. Slant route pick. Aiden Hutchinson tries to wreck Adrian's knee. Boom, fumble. As it's a tie ball game and you're going for the winning drive. It's something that dare I say, won't be tolerated, no matter who you are, by Coach Whipple. He's seen a lot, he's done a lot, and I don't know that he's, a teddy bear. I mean, if he gets pissed about something, he's going to let you know about it, and he isn't afraid to make changes if you're not taking care of the football. You're also going to have more options. You're going to have less experienced options in a lot of instances. Purdy's not played a lot of football. He's played some. Harburg got a look, but hasn't played. Smothers has one career start. And then you have a season of Casey Thompson. and his touchdown to interception ratio was really good, but he was always playing from behind or having to win a shootout. You want to talk about pressure? It's just a different situation, but the same result, a close game, right, where it's a touchdown or a field goal difference. You look at Texas's record last year. So you're going to have options. If someone gets hurt or can't get it done, there's more to pick from.
And that's not just at the quarterback position. The quarterback's a great example, but when you look at running back, last season, if Ramir Johnson wasn't seeing the holes well in a game, if what they practiced all week in practice wasn't what they saw on Saturday, the defense changed things up, Nebraska couldn't go to a different running back really last year and have confidence in that guy as soon as Gabe Ervin went down. I mean, you look at Jacquez Yant, where he had issues with fumbling and tripping over his own feet behind the line of scrimmage, not hitting the correct hole, or I'm not sure you could 100% trust him to put him in if Ramir Johnson wasn't getting the job done. This year, I think personally Anthony Grant's going to be the starting running back. That's how I see it right now based on what we've heard coming out of spring. But if Ramir Johnson is the guy, you have Anthony Grant as a backup who's looked great in the spring. You have another year under the belt of Jacquez Yant, where you'd expect he's going to make some improvements, and maybe he's a more competent backup running back. Gabe Ervin coming back off injury. And even along the offensive line, if an offensive tackle is struggling with a pass rusher, say Prohaska is really struggling on that left side, I think you're going to have backups that you can at least try to throw out there in the forms of Benhart, in the form of Brent Banks, in the form of maybe Hunter Anthony. There's a lot more options just top to bottom for this Husker offense, and I'm not even getting into the wide receiver position yet, where I think if things aren't going your way, if a guy's not taking care of the ball, if a guy is being prone to penalties, just losing his matchups, I think you have more options of people to turn to who can maybe make a difference on that offense.
Well, think about what Martin said as well. Oliver's like, this dude's got an answer for everything. How many times in the last 4 to 5 years have you felt good about Nebraska's ability to make an adjustment? Either offensively, I think they've adjusted better as they've kind of grown defensively, right? But offensively, I mean, it felt like the game plan was to jump out, blitz them with a flurry of points, and you're up 44-7. Hadn't happened except for the Northwestern game, right? In the Frost era, it's a drastic change for how. How he won ball games at Central Florida with really good talent against a pretty strong conference on paper.
I think we've seen more of less Northwestern, more what we saw Penn State in 2020 or Iowa last season, where you jump out in the first half, score a couple of touchdowns before halftime, and then you're hanging on for dear life in the second half.
Because you don't get anything going. There's no zig when they zag to the defensive adjustment. So to your point, you're going to have more options. That's key. You'd like to think you're going to be better suited to in-game adjustments, because you're going to need to do that by Series 3 or 4 if what you planned and prepped wasn't working or it's stagnant. Can you go to a plan B or a plan C and have it work? But overall, offensively, it's going to be just paramount for Nebraska football to be able to kind of settle down, and above all, just go do their thing when it comes to making an adjustment and having a different option, and more help, more lean on the run game, trust the offensive line, find a go-to setup or system with your wide receiving group, and be a balanced offense that can scare defenses with their pass catchers, grind away and be physical on the line, and have a physical, tough run game. I mean, this running backs situation is going to be pretty fascinating moving forward, because you feel like Grant, Ramir, and Yan are your top three. Gabe Ervin's coming back from injury, and then you're adding Emmett Johnson, potentially DeAndre Jackson from A&M, and A.J. Allen's coming in from TCU. So who's left? Well, a lot of kids that saw time in the second half that ran hard, that I would think either are native Nebraskans that'll continue to grind away. They want to be here, you would think. That, to me, just leaves Marquis Stepp as a question mark. You've already had Scott and Morrison transfer out a year ago. So you have a new group of backs with a new man leading the charge at running back. 3 out of 11 seasons in the Big Ten, Nebraska has finished the season with their leading rusher at running back. People have gotten dinged. People do get dinged in the Big Ten. As nice as Rahmir was, it was no different for him. Nebraska had to go elsewhere for the final 2 games.
And I think I feel as good about the running back position for this upcoming season as I felt during any season under Scott Frost. And I think you can say the same for the wide receiver position. You can say the same, I'd say, for the quarterback position. The position group, I'm still in wait-and-see mode, and that might even be generous, as the offensive line. The offensive line is still the biggest question mark of this offense, and you can have talent everywhere else in the offense, but if the offensive line is not able to give the quarterback time and not able to open up any running lanes for the running back, you're going to struggle offensively despite the fact that you have a lot more talent in these other positions. So a lot of this offense's success is going to come down to how well this offensive line can play, and that's where I'm still in wait-and-see mode.
Well, and that's fair because you don't know who's healthy, who's recovered, and who's ready to go. And then you still got to settle on your 5 and then find me +2, right, as a swing guard, backup guard / center or tackle. There are options. What's the development like? You hope it was good during spring. You think it was pretty decent during spring as they leap on in. Well, it is evaluation time, and how is that going for the Nebraska coaches with some in-state talent? We'll find out next. Greg Smith with us from Hail Varsity. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We're efforting one Greg Smith to talk some recruiting, but pretty busy week for Nebraska. Coaches have hit the road. Look at Greg's take on things. And, you know, you look at some of the in-state talent that is part of this 2023 class. And 7 in-state kids Nebraska has offered. Malachi Coleman, Maverick Noonan, Brock Knudsen, and, of course, Benny Nagoy. We're set to talk with Benny here in about an hour and 15 minutes. Ben Brahmer, Gunnar Gatula, Sam Sledge are already in the boat for Nebraska for 2023. And, of course, you have Zane Flores that said, I do to Oklahoma State on Easter Sunday. So Mike Gundy getting his quarterback. We say hi to Greg Smith and Greg Smith HV on Twitter. Greg, busy week for Nebraska, spring evaluation time. You've been covering recruiting a long time. How do you kind of rank this in-state crop here for 2023, bud?
Yeah, man, it's really good. Like, this is as good as it's been since I've been doing this. Like, we've had some really good years where you've had, 5 guys from in-state back in that Henrich and Hickman year, and Garrett Snodgrass and Garrett Nelson and even Piper. That year, with all of those guys coming to Nebraska from in-state. But other than that, this year might beat that one just because of the depth of talent in the class that's not only coming to Nebraska and that can potentially still come to Nebraska, but then also the guys that could head elsewhere to play college football as well. It's a really deep group.
It's one thing to have Nebraska offer and on the road for the in-state kids. Greg, it's another to have some of the who's who of college football infiltrating the state border. That's happening for Malachi Coleman. It happened for Flores, obviously, and it's it's no stranger to have a new logo in the mailbox if you're Noonan or Knudsen or Nagoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of those things that it's really tough for fans because you want Nebraska to get all of those kids, and it's great for Nebraska to land them, but it's also great for those kids to be able to have increased exposure because there's also a trickle-down effect because their teammates get to get seen and all of that too. But yeah, it only makes things tougher, but in the end, it's great for the kids. But it increases that competition for Nebraska for sure.
As you look at the Greg Smith big board, where are things slotted from a Nebraska need? What does Nebraska need in 2023 with what's available in state?
Yeah, it's interesting. From what's available in state, I think having an edge rusher that's going to be a really strong regional recruit in Maverick Noonan, I think is way up there at the top of the list. Nebraska also needs to revamp that offensive line and continue to bring in young players. So having a few guys in state to potentially hang your hat on there is also really good. And then seeing what happens, I think if you can land Malachi Coleman, he can if he develops into that edge rusher. Then you've also got another big bonus there. But even if he stayed at wide receiver, having a guy that talented is always going to be a bonus. So Nebraska's needs actually line up pretty well, I think, with players in state.
How big a fight is it going to be for Brock Knudsen? And I ask that because Matty Campbell took the old flying cyclone west earlier this year in person to see him. That's the first time a D1 coach has ever flown out to Scotts Bluff on a recruiting roadie. But I know that he's still an in-state Nebraska kid. Where do things stand with Brock and Nebraska and all of his other suitors?
I think Nebraska is in a good spot there. The key thing to know here, and I haven't talked to him yet, so I'm not 100% sure, but the key thing to me on a recruitment like this is whether or not Nebraska kept in good communication while he was waiting for that offer, right? If you're him and you see a couple of other guys in state at your position in the class, you may start to look elsewhere thinking that there's just not going to be room for you. But if Nebraska kept things open with him and said, hey, listen, and I think they did say, hey, we've got a new offensive line coach. He needs to evaluate everything. He's got a lot on his plate, and we'll get back to you, and then they did with an offer. I think that can really help their chances with that honest and open communication. But I think Nebraska's in a good spot with him.
Greg Smith is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Greg, after a disappointing finish to in-state recruiting last season, a couple high-profile guys getting away for Nebraska, it's been pretty apparent that this has been the focus of this year's recruiting class. But do you think there's any less attention on out-of-state recruiting because of the focus and the talent that they have on in-state recruiting? And is that okay?
I don't think that there's less of a focus on out-of-state recruiting just because Nebraska's going to always have to fill in the gaps with that out-of-state recruiting, right? There's an increased number of guys in the state this year. If anything, Nebraska just needed to increase the focus on those in-state players so they could do a better job of landing them, and they're on their way to doing that. We'll see how it finishes out, a long time to December. But no, I don't think it's coming at the expense of out-of-state recruiting. You're still going to see, as you saw for the spring game, a lot of guys coming in town from out of state.
Greg, tell me a little bit here about Benny Nagoy, Lincoln High prospect. We'll speak with him here after track practice, but just monster size, phenomenal athlete. Loved his film in space and, of course, going deep. And he was well paid attention to by opposing defenses, and it didn't matter. But he's a phenomenal combination of track athlete and football dude.
Yeah, he absolutely is. I think the first thing about him is he's got really good size. He's probably 6'3", 6'4", about 180, somewhere in that range. And he's got great measurables, right? We've seen him on video jumping out of the gym. You see the speed. I'm really curious. I know Nebraska offered him as an athlete today, so either or at wide receiver or defensive back. Like I think I went and saw him this past season, and I wrote that I liked him better at defensive back and what he could potentially turn into there as kind of a very big defensive back. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out for him and how this next football season goes. But another big-time offer here in state for Nebraska. And I think that, Nebraska will probably shoot up towards the top, if not the top, of his visit list or of his school list. But he's got some visits that he's going to get in as well.
Yeah, and I remember a guy, defensive back from a couple years ago, that came over from the offensive side of the ball, and that name is Stanley Baptiste. Is that a similar comp to what you'd see with Nagoy if you were to move over to the defensive side of the ball and play corner?
They do have similar size as far as height. I don't know about the size, like the bulk, but yeah, that's always kind of the comp if you're looking at that type of a guy, and that can really help a player moving over from defense or moving over from wide receiver to defensive back. You just have a different vantage point, and a little bit of the way that we see with Marquise Buford, right, moving from quarterback to defensive back, and he talks about some of those things as an advantage to him in making that move.
Greg, your take on Zane Flores heading down to the Mullet Land?
Boy, I still, like, you can see me shaking my head. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with that situation. We've talked about this a lot, and so it's hard to know, like, kind of, where Nebraska either dropped the ball, where he dropped the ball, what happened there between him and Nebraska. But that being said, that's a great pickup for Oklahoma State. We've seen him in person, right? I really like him as a player. I think Zane can really spin it, and I actually think that he fit in that offense with Gundy really well. They're going to have pro-style receivers down there to throw to as well, playing in a little bit more open conference. I think that's a really good fit for him and a good early snag out of Nebraska for Mike Gundy, which is something that I never thought I'd be saying.
Ever.
Well, yeah, but Greg, you mentioned the fact that it's an early snag. Are you surprised that Zane's pulling the trigger this early? I mean, his recruitment's really picked up over the past 2 months, and I was looking to see what other schools were going to come knocking in the next couple months, maybe even during a senior football season. So are you surprised that he decided to wrap it up and commit so early?
No, only because he's a quarterback, right? Like, I feel like anytime, we're talking about quarterbacks, it's generally the earlier the better for those guys. And so him knowing where he wanted to go and having taken a visit out there, at least one, and knowing where he wants to go, hey, just go ahead and make it, verbally official at this point. Now, I'm never surprised with quarterback.
Well, and the other part, too, is how many quarterbacks are portal bound or that's the thing. Quarterbacks are really hurt because of the portal now. High school quarterbacks are. I mean, there's more competition to go get a guy that's air quote more college seasoned. But I think Zane will kill it down at Okie State, man. Good ball player. Greg, coaches, where are they at? Are they just mainly in state here to start off the evaluation period?
Yes, so circling back to what we were talking about all the in-state talent, like them starting off in-state instead of starting out, down in Georgia or Florida or wherever, and then kind of making a pit stop back home, I think it's a really good showing. I think it's also great to see that, Mickey Joseph was out in the Lincoln High schools. He was out in the Omaha High schools as well. I know he was at Lincoln High where Benny is. He was out at Omaha West Side. Mike Dawson was out at Elkhorn South where 2023 Edge Maverick Noonan is at. You've got some other guys out in the state as well. Keep in mind that during this time, the only person that cannot be on the road is Scott Frost, so you won't see any reports of Scott Frost being out there. But yeah, covering the state is where those guys are.
Dylan Raiola was at Ohio State over the weekend. Do you believe that Ohio State would pass on a 2023 quarterback if they got a commitment from Raiola for 2024?
I do believe that, and I believe that after this visit this past weekend that Ohio State is in the driver's seat for Dylan, and that probably is part of the pitch based on what I'm hearing, and it's a smart move for Ohio State. They're never hurting for quarterback talent, but when you get to, make a solid pitch like that to the number one player in the 2024 class overall, that's something that would make you not need to take a 2023 quarterback, especially considering, that they've got 5 stars already on campus at the quarterback position waiting for C.J. Stroud to just head off to the NFL. They're in a good spot right now.
Greg, last thought here, about a minute left, and you mentioned last question that Scott Frost not allowed to be out on the road right now. What is the head man allowed to do in terms of recruiting first off in the next month or two and then just as a whole until the season starts?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, he can be on campus, and if they were to do official visits, because you can still technically do those, I don't think you're seeing a lot of them right now because teams are waiting until the summer. But he could be a part of those. But he's really probably back at the office, kind of making calls and getting on FaceTime with kids if that's allowed. Then he'll be able to get out and be part of camp season once Nebraska starts, going out to different satellite camps and then hosting their camps when it comes to June. And then also Nebraska will be have an official visit starting here in May, because Caden Green, the 4-star offensive lineman out of Missouri, has told me that he's going to be on campus for an official visit on May 20th. So look out for those to start beginning next month as well.
Greg, real quick, about 20 seconds. You've had a great video experience with a lot of the kids that were here for the spring game. Any kids stick out to you in your sit-downs?
Oh, man, that's tough. Joshua Manning, the wide receiver out of Missouri, I really like where Nebraska is with him and things that he says about his relationship with Mickey Joseph. He's been to Nebraska, I think, 3 or 4 times since Mickey Joseph has been on campus, because he's been I knew he was at the spring game, was at one of the junior days for sure, and maybe popped down a different time. That's always a great sign, right? So if you're looking for another wide receiver to look out for, and I think Nebraska's going to take at least 3 in this class, he's definitely one to watch.
Greg, keep up the great work. Thanks for a few minutes.
Hey, thanks as always. Have a good one.
Hello, listener. This is Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce: 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. 20 minutes away from Charlie McBride. Phones open for you at 466-377-6800. 825-5865. We started the show off. What do you believe? Will Nebraska have better quarterback play in 2022? O-line's first, but quarterback's right there. You need better quarterback play. If you think so, why? If you don't, why don't you think they'll have better quarterback play? 466-3776. I'm in the camp of yes, because of the options you have, and I think you're just going to have more ability to adjust by your new offensive coordinator. Period, point blank, end of discussion. I'm putting my chips and Elijah's in the middle that it'll be a better run offense. It'll be more fundamentally to a T with the offensive line play. I think your running back room will have more polish and better execution, and they'll know where they stand. It isn't going to be a merry-go-round of carries or some guy plays a game and then disappears, and you'll have a standard enforced more so. So that's where I'm at. We'll dive into the Athletic story on what has happened to Colorado football next hour. We'll talk to Charlie McBride here about some spring evaluation stuff that he went through. And also we'll remember Brook Berringer 26 years ago today, Brook passing away in that horrific plane crash. So you have the quarterbacks center stage here, Elijah, set to rock and roll coming up June 1st for the match. So Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Nice shade thrown by Tom Brady towards Josh Allen on Twitter. Pretty funny. Are you missing? I mean, Phil's kind of in exile right now. Tiger's injured, even though he's played. He didn't Tiger from pre-February. So you're not going with any PGA. Are you going to tune in to watching 4 NFL dudes swing the clubs on June 1st?
I wish they added. I mean, well, I guess I want a pro golf element to it. Well, see, I'd like to have it be something where you can pair up these quarterbacks with, like, say, a wide receiver or one of their best friends on their team, and then you can have a pairing. You can do like best ball or something like that. Mm-hmm. Where, these guys are going to be competing as individuals, which is fine. But I think what made the last one special is the fact that you had these guys who aren't golfers teamed up with somebody who was in fact a golfer, which I think made it a little bit more watchable. The fact that the scores are probably a little bit lower. I don't know what the golf games of these guys are like, but I mean, I'd be watching to see who shoots the lowest score, not who shoots the lowest of the high scores. So I guess we'll see how these guys are as golfers.
Well, I mean, you had Phil and you had Bryson last year. That was out in Big Sky, Montana in July. And you had Rogers clinching the victory with a 12-foot putt on the 16th. This is going to be a 12-hole exhibition at the Wynn in Vegas. That's the golf course on the Vegas Strip. It is all for charity, which is great. And you got the old guard, Reggie Dunlap and the old guard. The old guard, Brady and Rogers versus Mahomes and Allen. Is Mahomes' little brother allowed on the course to Instagram and taunt?
I sure hope not.
I mean, I right? Don't you want to see Jackson in the sand there screaming,
no.
"You will not make this putt"?
No, I don't want to see him on the TV screen at all.
And then you want to see a riled up Brady come after him with a wedge? Could do us all a favor.
All I know is I think it'd be fun to see like Mahomes and Kelsey teamed up, Brady and Gronk teamed up. That's what I want to see. I want to see these guys with like some of the guys that they know best teamed up together, and we see what their interactions are like off a football field, but still in a competitive environment.
And I want it live mic'd, and I want a shot per hole.
Yeah. Well, how about a shot per bogey? Every time the team bogeys, you got to take a shot.
Depending on how you look at it, your punishment is a shot if you bogey, or a shot when you lose the hole.
That works too.
Or you got to shotgun a beer.
'Cause that would make for some entertaining TV come holes like 16, 17, 18. Whenever you got Josh Allen 16 shots deep.
Well, imagine. How about Gronk?
Oh.
How about Gronk deep? I mean, we can only imagine. And then Kelsey's act with the Chiefs Super Bowl celebration, going full WWE mode. And then, of course, Brady needing to be escorted. The only thing he wasn't wearing was a life jacket around his neck. See, this is good. What we've thrown out may be a little bit better.
Or the fact that they're doing it in Vegas, there better be some like wagering between the guys on holes.
It's legal. Now, just get clearance from the NFL.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a great point.
We don't need any Art Schleister type punishment coming down the pike.
Yeah, I didn't think about that one.
You know, you're going to throw a little bit of a wobbly pass on 3rd and 8 if you miss this putt or make this putt. Next time we play each other in the regular season, I am going to miss Romo and Manning. Peyton, they ought to have Peyton do the commentary on this.
Just get Peyton in the commentary booth. I don't even care what sport it is anymore. I love watching that Manning cast.
But no, get Peyton and Barkley to do the play-by-play of it.
Ooh, Shaq is like an on the greens correspondent.
Yeah, I mean Shaq, or just mix in Barkley in general and give some strokes.
You can make Jackson the TikTok correspondent.
I guess you could.
At least put him to work if he's going to be there.
That might turn off half of America and a majority of the audience. This will be on TNT, so we don't have to pony up for it. The first one of these was at a pay-per-view?
Yeah, I think it was also on TNT.
Okay.
I believe. Lord knows I'm not paying to watch this.
No, I don't think I would either. And June 1st in Vegas will be a bit toasty.
No, I'd do the pay-per-view if this was a cage match, as Tom said, but Tom said on Twitter that the NFL contracts did not allow them to do a steel cage match between the 4 quarterbacks. I would pay for that, though.
They would all 3 team up on him.
You think?
Oh, completely. They would tie him up to a chair, and they would force-feed him fast food to see if he'd explode.
I don't see Rodgers teaming up with any of his competitors in the NFL. I see him, he's a one-man band type of guy.
Dude, after getting ousted by Brady with home field, you bet your ass he's going to be part of that 3-man tag team against Tom Brady. They don't want to injure, but we may scare him a little bit.
People's elbow.
Yeah, the people's elbow for sure. But there's your golf update. Shuey will have a take on this, I'm quite certain, on Wednesday, so pretty good. Next hour, we will run down Charlie McBride, Mr. Blackshirt, get his take on spring evaluation and the importance. 7 in-state kids now offered by the Big Red. 3 of them already, 3 of the 7 have committed, Brahmer and Gatula and Sledge. But Coleman and Noonan, Knutson and Nagoy still out there for Nebraska.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, be sure to download, subscribe, and rate us, good, bad, or ugly, the podcast. It's Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And take us with your time. Catch us live, of course, around the state of Nebraska. ESPN Lincoln in Lincoln, Superstation, 1460, 1550, in the 92.1 and 92, I think 7. Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, and News Talk 900 in Columbus. So catch us wherever you're headed or from. Appreciate you doing so. Reminder to get buckled up. Game preparation and repetition predict success and winning. Drivers and vehicle passengers who always use their seatbelts will increase their survival chances if a crash should happen. Remember to always buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. It'll be interesting to see if there's attrition that happens here towards the end of the week. You've had the exit interviews, presumably into last week or a lot of last week, and maybe a few more this week. And I know coaches are also on the road, so that timing may not mesh up. But who's staying, who's going, and where is Nebraska at as they head into summer workouts and summer conditioning? Quarterback play, we'll get Coach McBride's take on it. Will Nebraska have better quarterback play? Also, his thoughts coming up on Nebraska's staff on the road here locally and the spring evaluation period. It is weird, and Greg Smith touched on it. I can't remember the last time a Nebraska high school product went to an Oklahoma school. I mean, I know it's happened, I think, for Oklahoma, but not for Oklahoma State. I think Junior Bryant went from Creighton Prep to Notre Dame, was really pretty good. I grew up playing ball in the schoolyard with Ty Good, a hell of a great player. At Lincoln Southeast, he ended up going to Notre Dame. And that's kind of from my era.
In basketball, recently, you had Donovan Williams go to Okie State.
Well, that's, for basketball.
But different sport.
Mm-hmm. TJ Pugh went down to KU.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I know of anyone. Oh, you had, who's the...
You have more on the basketball front.
Who was the tight end who went down to Oklahoma? From up at, was he Bellevue
Caden.
West? Caden Helms.
Yes.
Caden Helms went down to Oklahoma, I think.
Was it OU or was Auburn?
Wasn't that Riley Ducker that went? There was two tight ends that went.
That's right. Nebraska lost their ass in tight ends last year. But to their credit, they've also got Fedoni, of course, and Rollins. I mean, there was just a lot of tight ends to pick from.
Yeah.
So I need to recant that lost their ass comment because they've done quite well. They've targeted and went after and done pretty good, at least so far for what we've seen through spring, and you hope Fedoni gets healthy.
Yeah, I tend to focus on the in-state kids that end up coming to Nebraska as opposed to leaving.
Yeah, and I think Kearney's going to be a good ball player as well for the Big Red. So, hour 2 loaded up. Benny Nagoy, again, offered as an athlete this morning. The standout from Lincoln High, set to be with us less than an hour. We'll try and catch up with him with his schedule. The guy's doing track right now. And Mr. Blackshirt is next. Charlie McBride, thanks for spending time. Hour 2 on the way with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Back to Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We say hello to Mr. Blackshirt himself, a Monday with Charlie, Coach Charlie McBride. Coach, you got the snowshoes out up north?
Yep. Yeah, I was just having a meeting, with Elijah, and he said that I should not complain about the weather because it's beautiful there.
Well, it's not. It's been a long way since beautiful. The last 3 weeks, we've had hurricane force winds. It almost feels like.
But that's beautiful compared to a snowstorm in mid-April.
I get it. We had snowflakes in the driveway yesterday, leaving for Easter service, and
yeah, I know. You sent it to us. You sent it to us today. We had a nice day yesterday.
Pretty soon we'll get golf weather,
Oh, don't even say that.
Well, we'll just keep holding our breath, Coach. Well,
yes, sir.
This time of year always has been busy for coaches, and now that we're able to get out and be a little more normal, the spring evaluation period, right?
Yeah, this is. We kind of the end of our, because the signing date was like the first Wednesday, the 6th all the time, I think it was, and then the rest of the month we were on the road recruiting walk-on kids and in our areas, and so, but it was like we're still gone now. We're really gone from home, So it was kind of however, it was a little more relaxing than getting ready for a game or getting ready for the spring game or going through spring ball. And so it's good for the coaches in some ways, but they're just not with their families. A lot of them, I don't know if the rules are the same, but we could only have 7 coaches on the road at a time, but we could, and if one, you couldn't change like you do now. I know at the end of even my era, they were able to change coaches. I guess two coaches a month or something. I don't know what it all was, but they change about every 15 minutes anyway, don't they?
Well, it's been shifting, and Coach Frost is not allowed on the road. The rest of his staff is to go see players, and there's 7 in-state kids that are getting offers from a lot of places. You have the quarterback up in Gretna not only was offered but gave a verbal commit last night, Zane Flores, to Oklahoma State, so he's going to go play football for Gundy. He's an hour away from Nebraska, the university, and you have a kid out of Lincoln High that we're going to talk to in a little bit that got an offer. You have a really heavy crop of in-state talent that are scholarship not only look-ats by Nebraska. 3 of the 7 have committed to Nebraska, but you have schools like Washington and where else do I want to go? Iowa State, Kansas, Pitt, UConn, Missouri, Texas Tech. Iowa's always coming into Nebraska, so it's open season, bud.
Right. When coaches let the state go, they go back to Riley the first year. I don't even know if they recruited the state, and that opened the door. And then the last one that I know of was Pelini, who let the kid go to Stanford, who said the reason we didn't recruit him hard was because we didn't know where he's going to play. Now, that to me is, you can't say that, and you don't do that, because you'll find if the kid's a player, he's going to play, someplace. But anyway, there's so many different things. But now, you got Wyoming in with Craig Bowl, who's banging the university, and you've got all Kansas State's in here now, and LSU, Oregon's in here now. Once they're in here forever. And if you just let kids in the state go, they're going to go, because if you don't pay any attention to them, then they're out of here, because that's just the way they feel. And I mean, we've lost kids now to Wisconsin, Stanford, Iowa. I mean, some great players, guys that are starters as sophomores and freshmen, and that stuff doesn't go very good. Once that happens, it builds a decay around the whole football staff as far as recruiting.
Well, and it doesn't help that you're not winning right now either, correct? Well,
that too, but I mean, I listen to guys on TV once in a while. I hear people, that are fathers of one of our players that happened to go to another school and said, well, he wanted to go to the school where they were going to win. Mm-hmm. Well, he's a freshman. As he gets into a sophomore, junior, and senior year, he may be getting into a year where they're losing all 3 years. So, you pick the school you want to go to. I mean, that's where where you have a chance to get a job from a person in that state who, because you're a player here, you're a good student, you've done everything, who wants to hire you. When you go to another state, they're going to take care of their kids first.
Charlie McBride's with us. No, I get you. Well, and to make a point, you mentioned Bowl in Wyoming, but also Leopold down at Kansas, right? I mean, he was at UNO, and he's knocking on the door. Matt Campbell's been in Nebraska a ton, so Nebraska's, I think they're really working hard, though, Coach, to keep those in-state kids here.
Well, there's a little difference in what's going on here. Mm-hmm. What's going on here, we're going to the thing, we're looking for ready-made players that are already there.
Portal.
And there's not a lot of talk about developing players and starting from scratch and having kids. When I went to school, I mean, this is stupid to be saying this, but it was the same with our guys. When I went to school and our coach got fired, mm-hmm. we decided we're gonna win the conference. We decided it, not the coaches. We didn't even know who that coach is going to be. Mm. We didn't care. We decided we're going to win the conference, and we did. As seniors, we went to the Orange Bowl. We won the conference and everything else. We had the most players in the conference drafted, and you look at it that way. That's the way I grew up. I mean, you don't give up on something. You choose a school because you want to go there. I mean, not because they're winners, losers, upside down, backwards. You go to a school where you feel comfortable and, you feel like you can be helped through school and after school. And so, that's why I look at this state that's been so loyal to their players. Mm-hmm. That I think a lot of guys don't look at the afterwards. They think of the 4 years, but they got another 60 years of their life left.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, I want to get a thought from you, and it's just a sad day when we look at history, and today was 26 years ago Brook passed away. And, what's Brook's legacy to you? What do you remember about being with Brook Berringer?
Well, when you talk like that, I mean, I can think about so much about his mom, mm-hmm. and how I mean, Brook there wasn't a player on our team who didn't care for him, and it's hard for me to even talk talk about it, but
Sure.
he was a kid that he was like Roger Craig. We had another running back came in there, and when they moved Roger to fullback, but he was a guy that he knew he was going to be something, a part of it, and no matter how he cut it, he was going to do it, and he did it. Mm-hmm. And he left a legacy here of being the kind of person he was, being the kind of football player he was. I know that there was a scout here who was, his name was Anderson. He was a starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ken Anderson.
He told me time and time again, we want this kid, and stuff like that. And, so you knew the Bengals were going to try to draft him, and you knew that he was the kind of player that had the intelligence to be able to pick all this stuff up and go play. And it just hurts when you hear what happened that day was like it didn't exist. For a lot of us, it was unbelievable. And a lot of the players, are just devastated.
Coach, thank you for sharing your thoughts, your warm thoughts on Brook today, and for answering that. Coach, got to switch gears. You have a profile that was just done by The Athletic, and they're going through football programs that were once really good and now are dormant, trying to climb their way back up. You're a Colorado alum. Colorado's the team featured in this story, kind of the post-McCartney years, and they've never been the same since they moved on from Coach Barnett. What do you attribute Colorado's struggles to?
Same thing ours is, changing coaches.
Yeah.
You had one that walked out on him in the middle of the night last year, didn't even say goodbye to his players. And
Tucker?
Yeah, and to me, kids don't look at this anymore. But to me, if a coach doesn't have 5 minutes to talk to his players that he's, that have played for him, and he just leaves for the money, that tells me a little bit about the coach and what he's looking for. And there's coaches, and I've been through this stuff. There's coaches that are there for the money. They're there they love the place. They want to coach there. And I think there were guys at Florida State like that. There were guys at Nebraska like that. There were a lot of coaches at Ohio State when I was there that are like that. And again, if you're a loser or you're not winning, there's going to be some coaching guys looking for other jobs. Mm-hmm. They want to go someplace where they win. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing different than a player saying, well, I want to go somewhere where they win. But the difference in the player and the coach is the players got to understand that once they leave, they're where they are, people forget them. Mm-hmm. Goodbye, And if they stay and the loyalty's there, then there's people in business, there's people around the state that are willing to help them do anything they want after they graduate.
Coach, a memory on a spring visit? Did you ever hit a cafe or a golf course? A fun trip in state that you maybe hadn't been to before?
Well, I never. You mean going around the state?
Yeah, when you're going around the state, maybe your first impression of a small community you'd never been to.
They never let me go because I was dangerous. I used to. Somebody said I was even worse than Cleet Fisher. Cleet used to grab by the throat and say, "What do you mean you're not thinking about Nebraska? Sign the paper."
Little Sinatra treatment.
They thought maybe I was going to do more than that. Just take them out in the woods or something.
That's pretty good.
But I'll tell you what, I didn't get a chance, but I think the biggest thing that I noticed when I was at Nebraska, if you could be in the office, if anybody could be in the office the week after the first week of the head coach was allowed to recruit, which was basically this week, Tom Osborne went by himself and recruited the whole state, walk-ons and scholarship guys, and himself. And he walked in on Friday for the meeting, and he looked like he was dragged through the, the ringer. I mean, he didn't ever want to lose a player in the state, ever. In fact, if there was a guy that was offered a scholarship out of the state, and we were behind on, we better jump on it, and he ended up probably getting a scholarship. And so, because we believed in him. I mean, if you got red blood going, then you belong at Nebraska.
Now, Charlie, we were talking on Friday with Bill Dolan about doing a tour, all 93 counties of Nebraska, maybe stopping by a bar in each county. Are there any places, any towns in Nebraska you stop by and they stuck out in your memory?
We got to hit that town.
Yep. Yeah. Well, are you talking about recruiting?
Just any town in Nebraska that you stop by. Maybe it was a recruiting visit. Maybe you were going for a little vacation, I guess. I don't know. Any small towns.
Hey, there's no question. And, the thing is, you tried to get the biggest bonus we had for us was the clinic that we had in the summertime. It was a real plus for us in recruiting and getting to know coaches. And that was our whole goal, was to meet as many coaches as we could, talk football, bring them into your office, to draw on the blackboard, do what you could do. If they said, Coach, would you like to come in? Could you talk to our staff? We tried to make time to do that. And, there's so many things that we tried to do everything we could to make the staff, available. But the thing still was the bonus was when Coach Osborne showed up in person. Because look at any other school. Their assistant coach comes in, gives you this song and dance. And when the head coach walks in, that means something. I mean, and so in the state, that's what Tom believed in. He believed that the head coach needs to be the guy that, starts the engines. And he did that.
Coach, we'll talk a little NFL draft next week. How's that sound?
I think I'm gonna try to avoid the way these. I listen to all their talk. They can't make up their mind on anybody.
I won't ask you who's going number 1 overall. We'll just talk about some of the options. Coach, you have a good week and stay out of that snow. Okay.
Okay. Talk to you next week.
All right, Coach.
Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you later. Bye now.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce: 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@hailvarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hope you're doing well. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Big thanks to Charlie McBride. He was awesome as always. And get that podcast to Coach McBride up Monday with Charlie. ESPNLincoln.com. It'll be posted on ESPN Lincoln's website. And we'll get the interview posted on ESPN Lincoln's Twitter handle, and SoundCloud portion will be up for your enjoyment. I just laugh out loud. And he's like, well, I was dangerous when I went out on the road. What, you're not coming to Nebraska? Right? The old hard sell. And I never got to meet Coach Cletus Fisher. But he's like, well, but Cletus was much worse than I was. The old in-state offer / threat. You're coming to Nebraska, aren't you? So that was pretty good. Benny Nagoy, standout prospect from Lincoln High, going to be with us in about 15 minutes or so. We're banking on that. We'll run him down sometime this week if his track schedule doesn't allow, but really good ball player at Lincoln High. So he got the offer from Mickey Joseph today. So,
well, I just want to add, I got to see him compete in track and field just a couple of weeks ago. I was out at, I can't remember which event it was, but it was out at Lincoln High, and I got to watch him do the triple jump, and holy cow, that dude can fly.
44 and what?
I don't know. I was sitting pretty far away from where they were yelling out the results. All I know
11 to 100, 11 offers. All right. And I think his broad jump's 10-10.
Oh, my.
I mean, just an insanely good athlete.
Yeah, all I know is his athleticism popped like even more from what I've seen in videos, which has been impressive. To see him in person, it was like a man that large should not be flying that far through the air. It did not seem human. Just
to spend 2 more seconds on Benny before this Big Game Boomers list of 100 greatest field goal kickers of all time. I get a kick out of Big Game Boomers Twitter postings. He goes through a lot, and Nebraska's been mentioned a lot with the different position groups. But with Benny, what's fun watching him, and I think this last season he had around 500 yards receiving, and they put him 6 touchdowns. They put him in the slot, a lot of smash routes to the corner, a lot of go routes off of a rollout, and he made a ton of nice catches in traffic, was able to shed tackles, very sturdy. I think your comp from a body style to Stanley Baptiste isn't far off. I think Stanley's just thicker. But as far as the quickness and acceleration, I mean, the jump balls and the go routes are fun because he's 6'4", right? And he's got track speed. So even though the poor corner in Pickett High School that was giving him cushion, he'd run by. And he'd run by the corner, given cushion, and he'd run by the safety, drifting over to help cover. He's just that. In his first step was great. At the high school level, putting him in the slot with some of his double move routes, very impressive. He can high point it clearly at 6'4". But what I loved is you throw him in the slot and you throw that little bubble or just a quick little hitch in the slot to him in traffic and watch him go get about 25 to 40 after the catch. But what Greg was talking about, Greg Smith, recruiting insider with Hale Varsity, he's been recruited as an athlete. He was fun defensively, either as a safety or as a corner or coming in off the edge. A guy at 6'4" in Benny Nagoy, at least through his highlight tape, has been very, very impressive with his wrap-up ability. And the dude hits low. That's hard for guys that tall to do, Elijah, you know. But for a 6'4" dude to go as low as he does and kind of power through with some tackles, pretty impressive.
Well, that's the thing, is it's one thing to go low on a guy. I mean, you see corners doing that in the NFL all the time.
They throw their body at
just
somebody.
Torpedoing at somebody's ankles, trying to get him to go down. That's not what we're talking about here. This is like in terms of the knee bend, the hip bend, just being able to get down low and wrap a guy around the legs and still be able to drive him to the ground despite the fact that you're 6'4". That's more what we're talking about here. And as you've said, recruiting him as an athlete, that's the best way to describe him. That dude is just an athlete, and there's probably 10 different positions you could put him on the football field that he'd thrive in.
Well, you have your 100 greatest college field goal kickers. Sebastian Janikowski, old Seabass, tops the list. Kevin Butler. I mean, he was playing, he played 400 years in the NFL, and he played at Georgia 400 years. Probably my most disliked kicker was Martine Gramatica. Do you remember him? You weren't born yet.
I remember his NFL days.
Right, where he blew his knee celebrating.
Yeah.
Shooting his mouth off to the bench.
Yeah.
He's 130 pounds, dripping wet, and he's shooting his mouth off. He was just a bleep talker at K-State. He was on that 98 team. That's why I didn't weep when A&M beat him. And then you have Alex Henry. How money was Alex Henry? I mean, just incredible. Not only in the Big 12 title game, but anytime Nebraska needed a money kick in a tight ball game, he was ice. So good. The 57-yarder against the Buffs, super impressive. And he's there. Now, you're feeling a little bit disheartened by Boomer's list here because he's left some Nebraska players off.
Well, I'm looking at it, and yeah, sure, Alex Henry is arguably...
He's the best here.
The best in Nebraska history. But you could put Chris Brown up there as well. And the fact that Alex Henry's number 5 all time... I don't know. I don't watch college football to watch the kickers, so I'm probably not the expert to consult here.
I think what he's done and the kicks he made, because I think it's fair, man. And I'm not a connoisseur of kickers either. I mean, Seabass was money. I mean, the guy got drafted in the 3rd round, and Seabass played 100 years. Seabass was like bar fight dude. I mean, he almost got deported while he was at Florida State. I kid you not, back to Poland or Russia. Legit, because he was like a barroom brawler at 270 pounds. Seabass fit Oakland perfectly. But no, Alex Henry's there. This Twitter handle also did college safeties not long ago. And I think their list was good, except that there was no Mike Minner or Mike Brown. Those guys were incredible. Where you got Minner was legendary, man, just super legendary for Nebraska, and he played so well early in his career. And then Mike Brown, though, was phenomenal. And Nebraska just stacked. And before them was Tony Veland and Kareem Moss. They were really good.
The thing about these lists, though, is you got to remember. If it was a perfect list, then no one would be talking about it.
No, I know. And from a defensive tackle standpoint, like Sue's number 1, which is impressive. I think he had some of his position groups screwed up. Because, I mean, Kevin Raymaker is really good. But Jason Peter, Christian Peter need to be on this list. Neil Smith for sure. Neil Smith wasn't a defensive end, I don't believe. Danny Noonan on this list. Well, but his top 5, I mean, you got the fridge comes in. William Perry comes in at 26. You have Sue, Leroy Selman, Joe Green, Bronco Nagurski, Aaron Donald, Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp's up there. Rich Glover comes in inside the top 10.
See, I'll save my anger and whatnot for his list whenever he releases the top 100 fullbacks of all time. That's whenever I'll have a problem with his list. But he hasn't released that yet, so we'll wait and see.
He may have done fullback.
Has he? I don't think he has yet.
Really? A while back. Well, then you just get into that discussion, man. Who's your fullback numero uno? I mean, do you go Schlesinger? Do you go Makovica? Do you go Rathman? Do you go Andre Franklin? I mean, you had some incredible greats. There's kind of my Mount Rushmore of fullbacks, though. Legit.
I'm looking back to see if there was a fullbacks list, because I don't remember seeing one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it. I mean, he's gone through the safeties list. He's done the cornerbacks.
He's done offensive line. He's done tight ends.
Yeah, Nebraska was linebackers as well. Levante David's in on there. You don't have, I mean, defensive ends, like good. He has Wistrom there, right, in at number 12. Reggie White's in at number 1. Hugh Green, 2. David Pollock. I know he had great numbers at Georgia, but really, it's David Pollock. Pollock, 9 spots in front of Grant Wistrom. Is Jadeveon Clowney in his Gator Bowl hit really in front of Grant Wistrom?
Well, you know what's funny to me? Well, David Pollock, I've only known him as the guy on TV. I didn't know he played college football until a couple years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had no idea, and I wouldn't have never guessed he was a D lineman.
He just magically makes $500,000 a year and sits and tours during the fall. He had to play somewhere.
Well, look at him and tell me that he even looks like a defensive lineman. I would have guessed like quarterback.
Teddy Bruschi used to play defensive lineman on those Arizona squads in the early 90s under Dick Tomey. They were great, the Desert Swarm.
Yeah, that one I did know, because then it was the Patriots who converted him back to linebacker.
Yeah,
which is a classic Patriots move.
Totally. And
take a college defensive lineman, make him a linebacker. Ed
Stewart needs to be on the linebacker list, because he's also he went the other way. He converted from safety to linebacker. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at. But we'll dive in. Neil Smith's not a defensive end. Jared Tomich is on the list. That's good. Also, you have Jason Peter, not a defensive end, defensive tackle. But the efforts there to highlight Nebraska. I'll keep researching the fullback part of this.
I scrolled back through. I still haven't seen it. However, props to Big Game Boomer for putting all these together, giving us something to talk about here. That's what these lists are all about. And he's done a good job for all history, every single team to go make a top 100 list for about every position. That's tough to do.
We will effort and try and run down newest Nebraska offer, Benji Nagoy from Lincoln High. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. A few minutes away, we'll check in with Benny Nagoy from Lincoln High. An offer from Mickey Joseph today. News on Sunday, Zane Flores off to Oklahoma State, an in-state prospect that is going to be going to Stillwater. 70% completion percentage. Gretna, depending on how you look at it, I know how the NSAA looks at it, but good enough to claim a state title in Memorial Stadium until it was taken away. But the kid can ball, and he is leaving the state of Nebraska. Good on him for earning several offers. We talk about Benny. This is where Nebraska's at. Obviously, the in-state angle is going to be key from a closeness to home proximity. But Nebraska finally getting an offer out there, and kudos to Mickey Joseph and Nebraska's staff for really hammering in state. Malachi Coleman, Maverick Noonan, Brock Knudsen from Scotts Bluff, Benny Nagoy, and Brahmer, Gatula, Sledge, all committed, but there's 7 there. So Iowa State is kind of his first visit. You look at the Iowa State visit in actually September 11th of 2021. Benny visited Iowa State, then again. So he's had 2 visits to Cyclone Country. He's had 3 visits to KU, 2 visits to Kansas State. Minnesota is in. Joey Gans in Northern Iowa's in there. South Dakota's there. But also, Coach Narduzzi and Pitt have been there. Washington with Caleb DeBoer, of course, the former Fresno State coach, now up at Washington, a guy that knows the Nebraska area very well, being at the University of Sioux Falls and having a record of like 105-3 or something ungodly as a head coach there before he moved up the ranks as OC. So Virginia is also in the mix. Texas Tech, Missouri, Iowa. So I mean, it's a slew of talent. So, and remember the video Kevin Suits put out, Friday Night Lights last summer?
Yep, that's what really put him on the map.
Benny Nagoy went full Randy Moss on somebody during Friday Night Lights. And then he had a good camp at Wayne State. So he's been turning heads. He's been doing it on the track, on the track as well during spring, and 11 offers and counting. So the fact Nebraska's in will be good. We'll find out more from Benny, hopefully, here in the next few minutes.
It reminds me of not to disparage that cornerback there, but it reminds me of a tweet I saw one time that said college football's fun because you're getting a future first-round NFL draft pick matched up against a future investment banker. And it's the similar situation at Friday Night Lights. You got a future Power 5 starting guy. I'm not trying to throw anything out saying Benny Nagoy is going to be this, going to be that. Obviously, development is huge in college football, but that's what the Friday Night Lights camp is all about. Seeing guys that are going to be a future Power 5 starter, a guy like Micah Parsons going up against a future economics major.
What did Mel Kiper say this weekend? You said something, different occupation, future occupation guys. Oh, he had 3 sacks against a tackle. They didn't get to play pro ball. Totally get it. Anybody stick out to you? And I'm not saying like to go down that dark road of, oh, Elijah had a bad game in high school. But any guys you went up against in Class A that kind of wowed you? I mean, you got to see Williams every day in practice, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you play next to him, or did he?
Well, there was Bryson next to me, who that was always fun one-on-one in practice, but he had a different gear for games that I don't think we ever really got to see all that much in practice, where
he would flip it and go to an angry place.
Yeah, the best lineman I played in high school is a guy that's now at Nebraska, and Kevin Williams. That was the guy that I remember Bryson went down with a concussion against Omaha North, and he was out for the second half, so they threw poor old me out there, who was not a good defensive lineman. And they threw me up against Kevin Williams, a future guy who ended up at Nebraska Power 5 type guy, and that did not go well for me. So that's the number one guy that sticks out in my mind. And I can't remember this. That would have been senior year. But there was another guy junior year at Millard West. He was a really good defensive end and ended up going Division I in wrestling. And I remember being not as impressed by him, but he was a Division I wrestler, not a football player. So
Those wrestlers got enough crazy for you? Or was it clearly his second sport?
I think it was he was a athletic guy, strong guy, but it felt like his second sport, considering I was a junior out there making my first varsity start, and I thought I handled him pretty well. But on the other hand, Millard West was going to be a team that was competing for state that season. I believe they lost in the state title game, whereas my junior season, were 3-8, or 3-7, or whatever, however many games you play in high school. So he may have also just not been taking me as seriously as some other matchups you might have.
Who wouldn't take? Were you trying to grow a mustache then?
I was not. But in my defense, I feel like I won the matchup that day, so maybe he shouldn't have taken me so lightly.
How many times you get called for holding?
Against him? Not once. I only got called for holding like once in my varsity career.
Really?
Yeah. And ask any offensive lineman, they didn't hold.
You guys never hold. USFL, did you watch much?
No.
It was on. It was kind of on in the periphery. You know, you had Mike Riley fist pumping, and the joke was little to no hip hip hoorays where they lost a tie ball game.
Well, I flipped it on briefly, and whenever I saw there was maybe 200 people in the entire stadium, that's when I went, well, if the fans in the hometown are even going to go out and check it out, why should I be checking it out on TV? I'll go watch my Nuggets get blown out.
Yeah. Well, they're moving the Creighton game off of FS1 to FS2 now.
Well, it sounds like they had decent ratings for an opening weekend, which was a little bit surprising. I think they peaked at almost 4 million viewers in that Saturday night game, which is
it's not bad.
Solid numbers for the USFL, considering that's probably about 4 million more than
how are the NBA numbers doing right now?
That's a question that is above my pay grade.
Text Garth. Garth, how are your numbers, brother? Actually, I think they were up 19%.
It's been fun. I think the LeBron fatigue has played its part in the NBA over the past couple of years. We're finally getting some young other stars that are coming up, and LeBron's not even in the playoffs this season. So
whether you agree with or disagree with LeBron's take on the world of politics, that has wore some dudes out who used to be NBA fans. Older NBA fans have stopped watching who used to love NBA. And then it hasn't affected some NBA fans that are older either.
Now, I looked up the numbers here, and you got to account for the fact that last season the NBA was still pretty limited capacity with a lot of their venues, and that changed a lot of things. But viewership in the prime time nationally televised games was up an average of 11% this season. So viewership numbers up slightly this year, but I guess we'll see what the playoffs brings, because that's whenever the NBA is probably going to make its money anyway, with finals and conference finals and whatnot. So we'll see how that comes. I personally enjoyed watching the NBA season this year, and as I said, those young stars, Trae Young.
He's been fun, man.
Yeah, you look at Ja Morant. You look at Anthony Edwards for the T-Wolves. He's been incredible to watch, and I think those guys are going to keep the NBA in good graces with the American people for the next couple of years. Those guys are exciting.
Well, we'll see if we can swing Benny Nagoy here in the next 10 minutes or so. If not, we'll give her another shot. But good times on a Monday with Hail Varsity Radio. Good stuff from Charlie McBride this hour. We kicked off the show with Greg Smith and recruiting. Hail Varsity will wind down on Monday, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Good stuff from Greg Smith, Charlie McBride. Love getting caught up with them. We did not get to the story of the dreaded Buffaloes. We will hit that at some point this week. But, you know, Nebraska is on that list of teams that have fallen, that are trying to rise up. Coach McBride hit nail on head with as to why teams have fallen off, and it's been coaching change. And, you know, it'll be kind of a funny sight to see which team returns to glory first. And Nebraska, Colorado, some of the other teams, Texas Tech. Let's flip this around. What teams aren't ever coming back? That's the question. It's not, could Colorado come back? Yeah, they finished in the top 20. I don't know. McIntyre's second year, then they, let him go. I don't think Texas Tech will ever come back to what they were with Leach. It's biased, forgive me. Arkansas, maybe. I mean, they've been through a few coaches, and I think they've got a good old offensive line guru down there where they can, not that Bielema wasn't, but had it fish out of water going from the Big Ten in the Midwest down to the SEC. He needed it to break right for him. And it just never did. He'll kill it in Illinois. Like, bowl-wise, he'll get to bowl games in Illinois.
I look at UCLA as a team that's never going to get back to their former glory.
10-2?
The fact, I mean, I'm talking like finishing top 15. I mean, sure, they can probably pump out the occasional 9-3 season, but
it's there to do, though, man.
I still see them as the little brother in LA, though, compared to USC, especially with what USC has put together with Lincoln Riley.
They've had a window.
Coach.
They've had a window pre-Lincoln Riley
and then
to do it.
And then I look at the fans.
Post-Carroll, pre-Riley.
I look at the fan support too, where the fan support for UCLA just isn't there.
Dude, you've got to be going 11-2, 10-1. You know what I'm saying here? Go win your conference and play in the Rose Bowl, then folks will show up. It was cool to be a USC fan during the Carroll era because they were winning. They were cranking out Heismans. They had Reggie Bush. They had the who's who of Will Ferrell and Snoop on the sideline. It was a party, and they didn't have any pro football really. Now you have the Rams and the Chargers.
That's why
it's SoFi, and it's still L.A., so there's 1,000 things to go do other than football.
That's true.
But we'll see.
A team I do see getting back, though, I think Miami's still got a decent setup.
Miami's always been underfunded, right? But you have a monster of an issue with being down for a while.
But they still have Miami. They have great NIL opportunities.
But you have Florida's been through the ringer of coaches. Florida State's down. Miami's been down. Cristobal's a cane. He'll get him up and running. They'll be fine with him. They've just kind of picked wrong for a while. And the entire country invades to recruit there. The 3 in-state schools, Georgia, South Carolina. Talk to you tomorrow on Hail Varsity.
a Hurrdat Media Production.